There's that woman again.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone to the Global Studio Sketching School review sessions. My name is Henry Tsang, and here we also have David Covo. So this session is meant to be a review session of the sketching that you have done and discussion around the works of everyone who's participating in this global studio. David, shall I pass it to you for a couple of words?
Sure. How would you like to proceed? Should we bring up? Do you want to bring up the mural board?
Yeah.
I think Chris has uploaded some work. Jenna, have you uploaded any work to the board?
Yeah, I have some as well.
Oh, great. What about Ken and Yu Yang? You did, yes, Ken? Yes, okay. And what about you? You? Great. Okay. So who would like to start? Any volunteers?
I don't mind going.
Sure.
So my work is on the left, underneath Kristen there.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't had much time this week. I'm doing 2 studios right now, but I'm really enjoying this global sketching studio. I'm finding it such like a huge inspiration. So I've just taken some time this week to kind of quickly work through some things. I spent the most time on the top drawing, and I was kind of inspired by everyone speaking and wanting to put an architectural spin on it as well. To draw a building that was represented in a dream that I've had. So I just tried a couple of different techniques, some layering, adding some color. Yeah, tried with that one. And then the other ones are just parts of some like working through some sites of a site that I'm working on for a studio. And then the bottom is just like a quick interior sketch that I did to kind of just get pen to paper.
So, Jenna, thanks for posting the work. Can you give us a quick sense of the sequence of the drawings? Which was the first and which was the last?
I think that I worked on this the sketch that is the middle one there. It's just I was sitting looking at the site just from my car, just trying to get a feel of the landscape there. So that one on the left there. Yep.
Yeah.
And then the one on the right is after I've 3D modeled the site so I could get a feel of the actual topography.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I think I worked on the interior sketch last night. And then the other one, top left, I worked on that for the past couple of days kind of thing.
And can you give us a sense of the time you spent in each one too?
The time I spent on the top one was probably no more than 30 minutes. Probably nothing more than 30 minutes for any of these. Just quick
study. And one last question, just to get a sense of the context. How big are they?
How big are? They're 8.5 by 11. These are on smaller. These are like moleskin size.
So the two in the upper left are 8.5 by 11, and the other two are more of a
smaller. Yeah, smaller. Yeah.
Okay. That's very interesting. So quick 2-minute interior sketch done this week to simply get pencil to paper. Did it work?
Yeah, I tried. I forget which speaker it was talking this week, but he was doing the doodle. Was it Chris? Yeah, he was doing the doodles. And it just ended up kind of turning out like his did. So I'm like, just to kind of get things flowing, just do that. So
yeah, I think for me the house, the dream house, well, it's a house from a dream as opposed to a dream house, I guess. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But there might be a difference.
There is.
Let's come back to that. That's a really interesting drawing. But the other two, the landscape, which was a view from your window, I think, did you say?
Yeah. Just no, from my car. It's just from the side of the road. Yeah.
Okay. And then the one down the interior, those are, I find both of those really pretty interesting sketches. The landscape from your car window or from the car is related to a project you're doing?
Yeah, that's correct.
At Athabasca?
Yep.
So that's very directed. You went out
Yes.
there, you said, I want to visit the site and I want to find some way to record it. What did you take away from that sketch? In other words, what did you spent just a few minutes on it, but it's a large scale drawing. It's a pretty good, first attempt at a sketch like this, or a pretty good early attempt.
Yeah.
What I like about it is that you filled the frame. You haven't made any kind of judgments about what part of the landscape is important and what isn't. We don't know what sort of editing has gone on, but it looks like a fairly straightforward attempt to capture, I guess, everything in front of you, and of course the frame is a result of the size of the paper. So what did you learn about the site from that sketch?
I was trying to learn a couple of things. One, scale of the site and what that would like. You can see the site from pretty much all over Vernon. So I was trying to get just kind of an idea of what the scale is. And then its surroundings as well. So it's context. So the one on the right, it's an accurate portrayal of the actual slope, but it doesn't portray kind of the mountains that are behind and the tree lines that are in front. So that's kind of what I was just trying to do there, quickly understand how the site fit into its context.
Okay. And the medium is is it pencil or ink?
I think that was ink, yeah.
Yeah. So that's something Henry, maybe we could talk about once we've had a chance to look at the drawings of the other participants here. And the drawing on the lower left is also very interesting for a number of reasons. You should do more like that, I think. Were you watching TV?
I think I was just sitting on my computer and yeah.
I do a lot of sketches like that when I'm totally relaxed, watching a James Bond movie I've seen 10 or 15 times already. So I don't have to focus too much on it. But the flickering video and the audio adds a sort of a bit of color to the evening. But the idea that you could simply look around and sort of revisit or rediscover, make what you thought was so familiar a little bit strange. I had a thesis student at McGill a couple of years ago who spent almost 2 semesters basically doing drawings like that of her own house. She did a whole series of different kinds of drawings. One drawing was about 1 meter high by 10 meters long. And it was a kind of panoramic view. She just sat down over a course of several days and just did a panoramic view of the whole room all around her. She did more objective drawings. She was trying to get at the idea of home, what constitutes the idea of home, and did it through a series of extraordinary experiments with handmade drawings at various scales and based on diverse strategies. So that's something I think you should develop a little more. What I would say about that drawing is that there's maybe a little too much editing underway. You left out the clutter. Nobody's living room is that neat. And what I mean by that is that whereas in the landscape drawing, it bleeds off the edge because you're kind of leaning forward. You're treating the piece of paper almost like a window frame. In the one down below, there's maybe less interest in the context than there was in the landscape. So the idea that the relationship of the chair to the table with the lamp, the window behind, all of that, could be as organized as a landscape. That's something that you might want to think about. there should be a lot more drawing there. Um, it's almost like, and I mean this in a constructive way, it's almost like you said, okay, this is all about a lamp, chair, window, and then it looks like a bowl of something in front on a low table. In other words, you're treating it like a composition of objects as opposed to the drawing just above, where there's no sense of object there at all. It's all about the subject. You see the difference there?
Yeah, totally.
Think about that difference, and think about the composition on the left, which is such a friendly, such a modest attempt to understand, where you live. A room that you thought you very well. Imagine redoing that, but seeing first the room. Seeing the window in relationship to the intersection of the wall and the floor. There's another corner somewhere. Maybe seeing it as one of a series of very quick studies as you look around the room. Mm-hmm. So less product, or less, well, I say product oriented, the product being the sketch, less object oriented, the objects being the furniture, more process oriented. What an interesting room this might be, and more subject oriented. Let's really explore the space all around me. Henry, why did you jump in?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with this drawing as well, Jenna. And we've been working together for quite a while, so I kind of know the way that you kind of see things, try to capture them. I think David is right. I think when you sketch, maybe you should concentrate less on what you think you're seeing, in the sense that you're looking at, you think you're seeing a chair and a lamp in a window, but try to take those words away and look at the whole thing as just different light and shade. For example, if you go around your room and start doodling things like this, look at the overlap. If you look at your chair, don't draw it as if it was a cartoon, as if as if it was an AutoCAD drawing. Draw it as you see the lines start to emerge of where is it starting to be darker, where is it starting to be lighter. Don't let your hand get away from the paper, because you don't want to do a contour drawing. You're looking for things that interest you, and you really want to kind of address every light, every detail, every thread of your sketch the same way. And you'll start to see the image emerge. And I think by doing this exercise of taking the labels away of your objects, you'll have a more even treatment of the room. You're going to start to see the whole room kind of emerge from this. You'll start to notice like the shade, the light, the little kind of crack in one of the blinds, and how that becomes the everything plays a part in creating that room, right? I think this is a very good exercise. I want to try to kind of shift what your eyes is looking at when you're drawing. You're not looking at the chair and trying to capture the line around the chair, but there's something here, right? I'm sure that there's light coming in from here, but what happened there? Or what's the glow around the light around this lampshade? To try to capture more than just the outlines of objects. I think you'll find it a lot more enriching as an exercise. I think,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Can I share something very quickly?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a cartoonist named Gary Larson?
I have, yes.
Are you a fan?
I don't remember actually what cartoon he does, but I do recognize the name. So.
He did a cartoon called The Far Side.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you do remember. I'm just going to share very, very quickly.
Did you want me
It's one of my, I use cartoons by some of my favorite cartoonists sometimes in lectures about drawing because they can be useful. I can't share, Henry.
Oh,
I think you have to enable in the little beside the green button.
does it work now? It says that you should be able to do it now.
Yes, yeah. So I'll find that cartoon again. Yeah, yeah. So no, now it's disabled again.
Oh. How about now?
Henry, calling Henry.
Yeah. How about now?
Yes, it's back. So I'll try this. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Do you see the cartoon?
Yeah.
Do you see it larger now?
Yeah.
I was amazed when I saw this. You know, the idea of taking labels off is something that we talk about a lot with students. Take the labels off things, pretend you don't know what they are, try to understand them by drawing them. Imagine them as transparent. Don't draw what you see, try to think about the forms. And I love I love Gary Larson's image of some character here, having gone all around his environment with labels and standing back admiring his work, saying, now that should clear up a few things around.
That is great. It's very applicable.
It's hilarious, very, very relevant. Take the labels off. That's what Jerry Tondino used to say.
I think that.
Thank you guys both very much.
Experience.
Okay, stick around for a few minutes because I think the idea will come up again. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think that's going to help you improve your sketching, Jenna. And I think the other ones I agree are very good. I think especially the one with the landscape. You know, I think when in studio it's very important to communicate intention, because I think that's the intention. The idea of design studio is to communicate a certain concept or a certain idea, right? So I think in your design sketches that when you're out there sketching the context or the site, I think it's important to kind of capture information of the site that you think will be useful in your design. So I think there was a lot of, to me, there was a lot of attention on the line of the mountain, right? That shape of the mountain. But I think there should equally be information on the plane, right? You didn't give any information on the ground, the soil. Is there any grass? Is it a rocky kind of site? Is it on a slope? Are there any bumps? You kind of drew this horizontal line that suggests a flat site, but it seems like you paid a lot more attention on that skyline. But I think there should have been information on the ground plane as well. So that
For
again is about taking your eyes off of what is drawing your eyes to. Of course, the landscape and the line of the mountain is very powerful, but also being aware of the whole page that you have and the opportunities to capture information.
Could you zoom in on that landscape very quickly before we move on to Ken or you or Chris? I wanted to make a comment about the idea of contour. Can you zoom right in if you can? That's good. So Jenna, what you've done is what a lot of people do. Where you said, I'm just going to draw over. You said, so there's the mountain behind the site, and you made a line like this, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the way those lines work usually. What you did in the background is actually much more interesting. Let's just clear that. You see what you did in the background, where we have something in the foreground here, and you recognize something in the background there, and then you recognize this in contrast to this. And I think where Henry was talking about, what kind of information we need about the foreground, but the idea that the background or the contour of the let me just try to erase this. The idea that the contour of that hill that defines one edge of the site might look, one line might look like this. Then there might be another line like this, and then another line like this, and then there might be something like that, and then that might break, and then that might break. That's one of the kinds of information that you might find yourself discovering when you challenge the notion that you can actually express the profile of the hill with a single line, especially when it's in the middle ground like this. In the background, I'll just change colors. In the background, I think what you do there makes sense. That's where you say, the information I need about that hill is expressed with a single light line. It's an idea about the hill. Whereas in the foreground or the middle ground, the texture of that line is actually quite different. We're seeing more evidence of trees. Every once, maybe the contour breaks up to reveal the profiles of trees. Whereas in the background, this one here, the trees are really irrelevant. And unless you found a way to kind of express them as a kind of a little point like that. So recognizing the relationship between the contour, the idea that what we recognize as a contour probably doesn't want to be rendered the way it might be in a cartoon. The idea that you can express the idea of a profile with a series of broken lines, all very important.
That's great. Thank you.
Same with clouds, by the way.
I struggle with those.
I know, the clouds are tough. We'll take a vote. I think it's unanimous. All 6 of us agree. Clouds are tough. High degree of difficulty with clouds.
Especially with pen.
Especially with a pen. So what a friend of mine used to do was wait for the felt pen to dry out a little bit, so that if he didn't press so hard, he wouldn't get a clean line. He could use it a little bit more like a brush. But sometimes with the cloud, again, there's a kind of a structure. So you can imagine yourself saying, well, there's a line there, and then maybe there's another line, like this. You try to find a way to. It's like a design problem, really. The clouds are always different, and the clouds are usually a pattern. Meteorologists take a look at our drawings and say, I've never seen clouds like that. Where did you see
These
those
are brand new. Yeah.
Exactly. As opposed to, that scene from The Rainmaker with Katharine Hepburn and Burt Lancaster?
No, not off the top of my head.
Well, the Rainmaker says, she says, how do you make rain? And he says, well, you take a big stick and you shake it at the sky, and before you know it, there's a few clouds looking, like a whitewashed chicken house, and then there's a flock of sheep, and then there's a whole herd of white buffalo stampeding across the sky, and then you turned around and there was a lake where you were standing. So the idea that clouds also have a structure is important, and that's one of the joys of this kind of drawing. You discover that, well, who knew clouds could be so interesting? Okay, Henry, I think we better move on. We
Thank you, guys.
We can spend the whole evening talking about any one of these drawings.
Jenna, I think that to me the drawing look good. I think the intention of my comments is that if you're going to use the design for the sketching for design, make sure you're efficient when you're trying to capture information. Because you have very short time to capture a lot of information, make sure that every line counts. Think about everything that we just told you and try to capture that information. But I think these are looking good.
Thanks so much.
Who wants to go next?
I don't mind going if no one else wants to jump at it.
Sure. You have a bunch of drawings off to the right, I think, Chris?
Yeah, sort of center page right below the Chris Cornelius' stuff.
Oh, yeah, right there in front of us.
Yes.
Where are you based, Chris?
I'm in Ottawa.
Ah.
So yeah, if you guys zoom in, there should be another image coming in that doesn't appear to be loading. or maybe it is.
You're just taking a bit of time.
Anyway, the drawing that's loading is actually a drawing that it's one that I did previously. So the sketches that you can see are ones that I've actually done this week.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I don't see it loading on my screen either. Is that-
if you give me a moment, I can double check to see why it's not uploading. Interesting. I'm not sure.
Is that the one on the lower left that's not loading?
Yeah.
Was it a big file?
No, it should have just been a relatively small one, but I did just upload it a moment ago. So that might be why it's causing problems.
Okay.
Regardless, the images on the left, I did basically use this to work on providing a frame and filling the frame and trying to, again, working from the reference image, obviously on the far right, trying to get better at working with the frame, establishing sort of the verticals and horizontals that as was discussed earlier, and trying to really take some time to get better at planning my compositions and conveying essential information.
Was this done from the photograph or?
Yes.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah. I live downtown Ottawa, and if anybody is paying attention to the news, sketching downtown is not really viable at the moment.
Unless you're into trucks.
Yeah.
And are they still honking or has that stopped?
It's still full tilt. Everything is going.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole other topic and seminar and probably architectural exploration and urban planning comments as well. But yeah, unfortunately, the bottom section isn't loading. I'm trying to re-upload it right now, actually.
That's okay. We can start with these drawings. Henry, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, okay.
And Jenna, since you're a veteran, you can also jump in.
Maybe Chris, if you could talk us through.
Go ahead, Henry.
If you could talk us through the context of this image, what are we looking at and what were you trying to capture here?
Sorry, the reference image I'm working from?
Yeah.
Or
is it a industrial building? Is it the back of an alley? What are we looking at?
oh yeah, sorry. It's so this is an industrial building, former government of Canada geology and mineral testing labs in sort of downtown Ottawa. This is actually being redeveloped right now. All of the brick buildings you see are abandoned labs. And then there's a big, the smokestack, obviously. So this was just of personal interest. It's a large scale, probably 5 square city blocks in downtown Ottawa that's all getting redeveloped because all of these buildings are going. So taking a moment to examine the materiality. The thing that drew me to this was the strong contrast between, for the image itself, the strong contrast between the shadows, the lines of the roof, or the lines of other buildings in shadow on the other facades, as well as the contrast between the dark alleyway and the light of the sky, and trying to really eliminate the excess detail and focus on conveying the shadow and the contrast to the sky, I guess.
Yeah, I really like, I think this is you did a few drawings to show how it led to your final drawing. And I guess the larger one is your final version of it.
Yeah.
So I think that this drawing conveys the perspective very well, and I like the work with the pen. I think your pen work is very clean, and I think I think you actually sent us a message, right? Don't you? You work as an architect now?
Yeah, so I'm practicing. I've been out of school for some time. What I've been trying to do is I'm a project architect. I do contract administration. I do all sorts of dealing with the physical, like getting projects built and getting permissions. I don't do a lot of big design work, and I'm trying to get back to that with sort of my art practice and looking at less of the actual aspects of architecture that are getting a physical building built and going back now to the more creative side of it, the generative side.
Okay, so that's great. I think it's good that you're trying to use it sketching as a way to generate ideas and to fuel your design. I think I'll just give you a couple of my comments and we can have a discussion around it. I think that to me, when I look at the photo side by side to your picture, I think that the shadow is even stronger in the photo. And I'm wondering why you didn't shade this side of the building as well, because I think that whole wall is also in the shade. And what happens if you did that is that then you put the focus on the light that is actually that and that little crack here, right? So it really frames that little precious crack of light that comes into the alley. So maybe, you know, this side probably wants to have the same shading as what you did here, just to kind of frame that one point perspective. I'm also thinking that medium wise, we could discuss about this. I feel like the ink drawing doesn't communicate the warmth of the bricks. I would probably have tried to do this in a watercolor just to get like a warmer tone, or maybe even in a brown Conte crayon, maybe just to get like also a warmer tone and a sense of the texture and the materials. Because I feel like that's also a very important component of this photo. And you can disagree. I think you can also tell me what you think. But also the sky, to treat the sky as well. I think the sky right now could have framed the chimney a little bit more if you had kind of given it a pattern or like a hatching of some sort. And then I think then you could really kind of push that perspective in the center there. I like that you shifted the chimney to one side. You know, in our first lecture, we talked about the rule of the thirds. If you have your main subject shifted on like a third of the page, it usually gives you a little bit more dynamic of it as a composition. But I think these are really strong drawings. I think you obviously have some skills.
Thank you. Yeah, it's trying to get away from all of the convention, like working daily with construction documents and everything I draw having to have like legally defined meaning. So getting into having that relaxed in drawing and working in this way is a little bit different and not something I'm used to. So I did re-upload. You mentioned color. The image I'm uploading is actually watercolor and some series of very poorly done acrylic paint and ink and things like that. But again, I'm having a heck of a time getting this uploaded, unfortunately. If we wanted to go and look at some other work, maybe towards the end, if this is actually uploaded, we could talk about it quickly.
Sure. I'll make a couple of quick comments.
Oh,
too.
yes, obviously. Sorry.
That's okay. Henry, can you zoom in on the, I'll show you here on this frame so that we can see, fill the screen with the studies and the photograph. And Ken Koo has just confirmed. Oh, there's your color study. So we can go down to that in a second. I just wanted to make a couple of quick comments about the sketches. That's good. That's great. Thanks, Henry. Perfect. So the first, like Henry, I think it's great that you're doing these studies. But I think you're doing a little too much editing, Chris. What I mean by that is that, and I'm going to just, I'm going to go to a color we can see, maybe red, and I'll maybe a thicker line. So for example, I notice in the photograph, you know, there's stuff here, not, oops, wrong line. There's stuff up there, not that important, but there's ideas here that may be more important than you think. You know, there's a kind of a relief in the brick there. There's also it's interesting in the drawing that Henry referred to as your final drawing here. There's no sense at all there of the amazing texture of that wall on the right, or more importantly, the sweep of these lines here. And I just kind of I'll shoot them in. You know, there's this. There's this. There's this. There's this. There's this. There's this. You know, do you see what's happening there?
Yeah.
They're all converging to a single vanishing point. We haven't talked much about perspective. Henry did a little demo of how you can block it by recognizing basically that your eye height, when you took this, did you take this photograph?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're standing and you're holding up your phone or your camera. So you're about that height, the horizontal line. So what I've said before in some of the sessions, I'll repeat, but it's always useful in any one of these sketches on the left to start with that line. So you imagine, you know, that horizon there, or the horizon somewhere here, the horizon down here. For me, it's almost impossible to start studies like this, which are so architectural, without using the horizon to place myself within the frame of the image, especially when we're on level ground like this. So in your case, the first two lines I would have made, I'll clear the lines here just for a second. Give me a second. There we go. So looking at the finished drawing, which is the most developed, there's you know, there's a horizon somewhere like that. That tells us where we are in the space. There's a vertical line which describes that line which kind of frames, as Henry said, the center third of the image, and that establishes the scale. So with two strokes, left to right and top to bottom, we've established where we are, first of all, with the horizon, and we've established the scale of the image with that vertical line. And the rest is just searching, you know, looking for, not for detail, but for information. So going back to the photograph, you know, that seems more important than you thought it might be. The chimney, as Henry said, it's the kind of it seems to sort of expand and contract in the images, but it sort of finds a happier home, I think, over here in that one. Here, I'll draw that in red. This one there, in that one image, where we have some of the ideas really under control, is where we get strangely enough, it's where we get the clearest sense of the, I'm having trouble erasing the image. It's where we get probably the clearest sense of this framing here as part of the foreground, the sense of the perspective. There's a lot of information here. You know, here you're really searching. You're looking at that ground plane, and you're saying, how can I express that? That's a major discovery, it seems to me. The fact that you're looking for that, but in the end, you've kicked into, you know, architectural thinking mode, and it's all of a sudden that sort of very interesting lane-like surface has been kind of cleaned up and is now beautifully rendered here. Where it gets interesting here, beautiful. Can you zoom in on right here, Henry? I just saw something which is quite interesting. How tight can we zoom?
That's as close as we can get.
A bit of a time lag.
Mhm.
Oh, it is, okay. It doesn't matter. And I can't seem to, there we go. Oh, good job. So when we look at it closely, we see there's a major discovery here. Look what you've done, which I think is stunning. Look at that. I don't know if it was intentional, but look at how you use the horizontal lines to give us a sense of a kind of a wave here, like this. So it's almost like we can kind of, it's like looking at a road sort of going away in the distance. I don't know if that was there.
Yeah, it is a very slight incline down and trying to get basically contour lines following the slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's spectacular. To me, that's a real discovery. And I don't read that as an attempt to render value anymore. I read that as a highly successful attempt to tell me something about the surface. It's almost like it was paved with, those could be horizontal joints, and you see the joints as kind of describing this undulating surface. That's a real discovery.
Mm.
That's what you take into the next drawing. That's also quite interesting what you did there. What's going on there?
It just takes a lag for your marks to come through. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at what looks like a bunch of some garbage or some.
Yeah, the stuff on the right side of the image down the alleyway. There's some scribbling. Yeah, that was garbage bins, and I dropped my pen.
Happy accident. We call that a happy accident.
Yeah.
Because is that an interest in a little bit of information? So there's also what I like about the drawing, although I think, as I said earlier, that you've edited out some of the interesting ideas. You've made some really interesting discoveries about technique that you can also take into the next drawing or the next series of drawings. You should do more of this. But I think, for those studies on the left, it would be interesting. You worked in pencil there for 4 of them, I think, yeah?
For all of the ones, yeah. It was just pen in the final.
Yeah, just pen in the final. So with the pencil in your hand, be less judgmental. In other words, don't be so quick to edit out the railing or edit out the relief in the brick or the garbage cans or the recycling bins at the end of the alley, or some of the texture. What's wrong with those air conditioners? What did they do to you that you like them so little that you said you have no place in my sketch? I'm just teasing. But those studies that you do on the left, which are so constructive, that's where you make the connection that we talked about a few days ago. By the time you finished, by the time you walked away, you can probably reproduce this, not so much the sketch, but ideas about that place from your head without going back to any of the sketches or the photograph by now, because you've spent so much time actually exploring these ideas.
Mm-hmm. It's really tough. Actually, this is on my run, or it was on my run. So I'd see it several times a week. And now I don't know what information I've learned from the drawing versus just sheer time on site. But I think everybody deals with that in architecture.
It's all the same, Chris. That's a great observation. It's a great observation. You run down that lane every day?
I would run by it several times a week for like 2 years.
So the sketch what the sketch is revealing is a combination of what from actually being there, and what you think from the photograph.
Mm.
Yeah. It's not very productive as a rule, drawing from photographs. I understand why you did it here, but most of us would advise against it.
Yeah, my first love is photography. So yeah, the idea that the camera creates the frame and flattens everything to a single plane is something that I understand and I'm trying to get away from. And yeah, absolutely.
There's another New Yorker cartoonist named Harry Bliss, who does amazing dog cartoons, among other things. He's a bit of a weird guy, but his cartoons are brilliant. He talks a lot about drawing on his Instagram site, Bliss Cartoons. And he went at length once on the problem of drawing from photographs. And one of the main points he makes is that the photograph, even the very best camera, the very best phone, doesn't come close to being able to render an image like this. The information that all of us get with our eyes in the shadow and in the deeper parts of the deeper values of the subject. So he says that he suggests that one of the problems of working from photographs is you tend not to see information that you would very likely have included. And for example, that missing, the photograph doesn't really highlight that relief here in the brick. But for me, maybe it's the architect in me, the emerging architect, that when I look at that recess in the brick, I see that it directly related to the door. So for me, it's impossible to draw the door without actually seeing first, the information related to the architect's decision to actually recess that whole part of the wall and then just cut a door out at the bottom. Different way of thinking about the subject. Jenna, what do you think?
I do really appreciate seeing the studies on the left, because lots of the stuff that I sketch in my book looks like that, and it doesn't ever progress to like the final version. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was that I did take place in the morning session as well. And Chris Cornelius did like kind of a quick review of your work as well. So if you want to go back and look at what he had to say about it, there wasn't much back and forth because you weren't there. But I mean, it's still, if you're interested, it might be worth your while.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I had no idea.
Yeah, thanks, Jenna.
Chris, I'd also like to suggest that if you like to work in
So great work, Chris.
Chris, if you like to work in pen, I'd like to suggest that you work with something that you can change the thickness of, that could be a little bit more pressure sensitive. So maybe when you're sketching, you'd be able to highlight or get some bolder lines for some details.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great thought. What kind of pen were you using?
That is, I'm trying to remember at the moment. That was probably a fountain pen.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Frank Ching a few years ago about this. We were talking about pens, and he uses a pen by Lamy.
Yes, I have a Lamy fountain pen as well.
Oh yeah, he likes it because there's a cheaper plastic version, $20 or $25, and we're always losing these things. So he's not heartbroken, when he leaves it behind, or when it rolls through a joint in the dock, or down a hillside. But even the Lamy, the $15 or $20 or $25 Lamy, there's enough flexibility in the nib that when you put a little pressure on it, the line widens.
Yeah, I found with this, working in a moleskin with it is too much. The Lamy nibs are too sharp and they tear the page. So with this one, I was overly gentle, and that's probably why there is such a uniformity in the line, because I wasn't applying any pressure.
Yeah, I started playing with pens by a company called Covo, and also Faber-Castell. They're not expensive. And when you get a medium or a broad pen, very often what you can do is you can reverse the nib. So you get the broader line when you use it in a conventional way, but the nibs are usually robust enough that you'll also get a finer line when you invert the nib and draw upside down.
Yes, I've seen that technique before.
Yeah. But the pen can be quite liberating, can't it?
Yeah, I find the excess with the pencil, when I hesitate, you can pause way longer than on pen because you'll go through the page. If it's a fountain pen, it'll bleed really bad. So I find I use that to keep my pen moving at times, but
Yeah.
it poses its own set of limitations and challenges.
Did you do any pencil work on the pen drawing?
Um, I basically just masked out the verticals. There's some on either side of the tip of the tower, you can see some faint lines. There are very like 4H guidelines on there, but not very many.
I asked Frank Ching what he does, and he says once in a while, and I do it sometimes myself. Once in a while, when he has a subject like this, fairly complex, what he does is he might put a dot there, and a dot there, at a few key points, so that he doesn't want to have to change instruments. He doesn't want to have to go from a pencil to a pen. He stays with the pen, but he'll do he'll use a dot to just kind of stabilize the composition a little bit. And what I do sometimes is I do a phantom sketch first. In other words, without putting the pen to the actual paper, I'll make the line, or make the shape. For example, as Henry was saying, that's a pretty crucial shape here. That's really what defines this dramatic view. That opening at the end of the 1 point perspective. So to do that in a kind of phantom mode, where you make the strokes, get used to the sort of muscle movement, and then you kind of drop the pen to the paper when it's not thinking, and it's a little more comfortable. So everyone has their techniques.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Yeah. Henry, do you work in pen very much?
I do. I think I prefer like an Indian ink with a twig. That's a technique I learned from Joanna, actually, to just kind of splatter some black ink. And I like the strong contrast and the kind of happy accidents that come with ink, almost like calligraphy, because I do a lot of Chinese calligraphy, and how that brush just kind of like drops onto the white page, and the how it captures the textures of the brush and the paper.
When sketching school, I made a pen out of a gull feather.
Yeah.
I was sitting down with a student, and I said, did you bring any pens? And she said no. And we were at the edge of the water, and there were gull feathers all over the place. You got to be fairly careful with birds' feathers because they can have mites, So, but this one looked pretty safe. So I cut a nib out of the end of it, and that was fun, actually.
Yeah.
Had lots of happy accidents.
Yeah.
What about Ken?
Is Ken still here?
Ken Koo. Ken, are you there?
I'm not sure which one's Ken's. Is this one Ken?
Ken, do you have any drawings here? Oh, he's no mic.
Is this one you're drawing, Ken?
Down in the corner.
Down in the corner. Oh yeah.
It's like we're playing charades here.
Yes. These are beautiful.
You found it? Oh, great. Oh, yes, these ones. Okay. Ken, no need to apologize. Can you zoom in? How tight can you zoom, Henry?
Yeah, which one do you want to see? Maybe this one.
Just zoom in on any one of them. Yeah. The one on the left would be great. Any one of them, actually. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Resolutions of
Ken,
the,
can you tell us something about these drawings?
you can type it out, Ken.
What's the medium and what's the size? Mechanical pencil, 11 by 14. Wow. The blue and red. And are they drawn from life or from photographs? Cafes. Wow. Wow. These are stunning.
I think you should definitely come to the next Monday session.
What do you think, Chris? What's that?
I was saying that Ken should definitely come to Monday session with Joanna.
You can zoom in on that, Henry. You can get it a lot bigger. You can go even farther. I was able to get it almost the size of my screen. There, that's good. Give it a second to refresh. It's absolutely astounding. Isn't that something?
I think these are great. I think Ken should definitely come to the Monday session with Joanna.
Ken, these are beautiful.
Joanna's
And Ken, yeah, we haven't shown any real figure studies yet. We showed some sketches of figures. We talked about drawing figures in museums. We talked about playing with watercolor on brush, developing figures almost as an exercise in calligraphy. But Ken, for decades, in my school, we had courses in life drawing. Henry took them. I did them when I was a student. I taught them at one point for a little while, not very long. And Joanna taught the course for many years. And our students, these were architecture students, had to do 4 semesters, 2 full years of life drawing, because we always treated it as probably the most effective way to teach students, to teach people, interested students, about media, about the subject, about the body. I mean, all architecture starts with some sense of the body in some kind of space. Henry's office and the drawers in my office are filled with figure study. Everything from moleskin size to larger than life. It's a tremendously empowering exercise. We don't do it anymore, unfortunately. I've tried to reinstate it, but we had a director a few years ago who thought it was silly, and he basically canceled the program, which is very unfortunate.
I wanted to say we did a similar. I did my undergrad in Manitoba like 10 years ago, and yeah, same thing. We did a year of figure studies. Basically, these are amazing. These are absolutely beautiful. I'm very impressed, Ken. And I think, oh, sorry.
No, Chris, please continue.
One of the things that I see in this and struggle with in my own figure drawing and how it relates to architecture was like the idea that in order to draw good human figures, you have to understand what's underneath, like what's underneath the fabric, what's underneath the skin, what's underneath the muscle. And when we work our way through buildings as architects, dealing with like physical construction, both as found and on site, the idea of being able to understand what's underneath the thing you're looking at and look at the cues and the guidance for what's actually hidden from view, like muscle under the skin or flesh underneath cloth, which you're totally getting here.
So Jenna, do you remember when we were talking about the idea of contour? Henry, can you go back to that last sketch for a second, please? The last sketch, the older guy in green, sort of looking over his shoulder. Yes, there he is. Zoom in. So Jenna, remember when we were talking about how you deal with the line of a distant hill? Look at the way he deals, for example, here with tell me when you're, okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, Jenna, do you see how he deals with the left shoulder here? There's no continuous contour. You see how the line comes in like this, stops.
Yeah.
This line starts from behind, sort of makes its way there. This line picks it up there. Look how he constructs, look how this line kind of disappears completely against the shading here. So he goes, we see the contour here. He takes the pencil off the page. And it doesn't even reappear again until he brings it in here for a little emphasis, brings it down. A stroke, brings it down. Brings it down, brings it down again. There's not enough sensitivity in the screen here to replicate what he's done.
Yeah.
Ken, it's masterful. You know what it reminds me of, Henry, these drawings? It reminds me of the sketchbooks maintained by painters in the Renaissance.
Yeah.
You know, Leonardo, Bramante, Michelangelo. They were well known, you know, for carrying their sketchbooks around, and when they were, you know, sitting in a tavern or having an ale with friends in the town square, they would draw figures and draw each other, and then they would use the information in sketches like these, Ken, to populate the paintings that hang on the walls of our museums. I don't see many flaws here. I see one issue, a minor issue, but it's not a flaw. Where do you see flaws, Ken? I'm sorry that you have no voice. Henry, the power in these drawings, and it makes an interesting connection with everything we're talking about, is how he plays with the actual line. You sense the pencil moving in and out of the page. You know, it's in the page with pressure, and then it lifts off, constantly moving. So I missed Ken's last comment.
Proportion,
Light and
light.
shadow. Yeah.
I guess to Ken, you know, we teach drawing as part of the design process and communication skill for architecture students. So a lot of times we talk about the figure and how they connect to the context. Look, for example, for me or architecture students, you know, it would be interesting to expand a little bit about the people who are in the cafe and how they're interacting with the cup of coffee or the table or the height of the table or the lamp that's above them or the window that's across the wall across the room. So that gives a context of where the light is coming from, a little bit about the materiality, like are the walls a wooden texture or is it glass, and all of that will kind of add to the context because the information of materiality obviously catches light differently. So we don't see the flaws of your drawings because we don't really see where the light the source of the light, right? It could be multiple. There could be one big window on one side, but there could be also lights all around the cafe. So we don't really know that. So I don't think you have to be too critical about your own drawings. I don't see any flaws in light and shading, in my opinion. But I think for architecture students, and if you're interested in architecture, I would suggest trying to sketch a little bit more about what's happening around the figures. Is there what's the what does the room feel like? Where's the light actually coming from? And the interaction of the people with the context. I think in our first workshop, we talked about storytelling, and the drawing that you come up with has a. We suggested students to have a narrative around it. You know, what are you trying to tell us with them? Of course, a lot of these sketches are for yourself, right? It's really for your own study and to for your own kind of archiving of information. But if you want to show, if you want to use them to communicate something, what do you want to communicate? And I think that that could be an interesting idea to bring to some of your sketching, is that some of them might have a narrative or a context around them. And you said that you don't have an education or background in art or architecture, so I find these very interesting. Are you doing this as a hobby, or do you plan to use this drawing in your work? What is your intention for these drawings? Well, it's not too late to start architecture school. We're always looking for talented students at Athabasca.
Henry, or Ken, where are you? Where do you live? Edmonton. Is there an art school in Edmonton? What about what's the name of the college that Barry Johns designed?
McEwen.
Actually,
McEwen, yeah.
I'm from Edmonton.
You are?
I grew up in Edmonton, yeah. As far as I can't speak to animation and art, but there are no architecture schools. Unfortunately, the University of Alberta has some stuff going on as far as like animation and things. NATE, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, I believe is what it's called, would be the place to look for that. But yeah, unfortunately, as far as architecture schools go, the closest one is Calgary. The second closest one is Manitoba, I believe.
Or if you want to do it online, you have Athabasca.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
true. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think Athabasca existed when I was doing my undergrad, so I moved to Manitoba instead.
It would be interesting to, Henry, maybe not Monday morning, but maybe for the last workshop to spend a little bit of time talking about figure drawing.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
as a separate.
talk about it, I think, on Monday. If we look at her work, Joanna is all about figures, right?
Of course, Joanna's. Yes, yes, yeah. Of course, that's it. That's true. That's right. Yeah.
These are the speaker on Monday, Joanna Nash. She's the one who taught figure drawing at McGill, like these ones. These are great. I'm so excited to see some really nice work.
Yeah. The other, going back to what Henry was saying, Ken, that I had a bunch of freehand, I had a bunch of figure studies on my laptop, but I can find only one. Can I just bring it up for a second, Henry?
Yeah.
I was going to make the same comment that Henry did.
We're looking at the cartoon again.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so do you see this one? Do you see the drawing on the screen now?
Yeah.
It's a figure study. It's fairly quick. And just going back to what you were saying about context, Henry, for me, when we're doing figure studies in the studio, this is on the 5th floor of the School of Architecture. The context is just as important. It may not be a cup of coffee or somebody reading a newspaper, but the architecture of the room and the presence behind the main figure of other people making drawings is, for me, a very important part of the narrative. The reason I have this one here is because that man behind the easel in the background on the left, he's on the other side of the room from the model that I am, was Harry Meyerowitz, who was a celebrated architect and artist who based in Montreal, who died about 15 years ago, thinking about 2005. So context is everything. Context, you don't have to treat it equally, but just as Henry, as you were saying, maybe just the line of a doorway in the background, other figures, having their own sort of conversation. It can be so interesting.
Absolutely. Well, Ken, if there's anything we can do to help you further your career in art or architecture or design in any way, feel free to get in touch with David and myself. We'd be glad to continue this discussion offline.
Mhm.
I'm
I wonder if anybody still teaches
life drawing.
Yeah.
There's with the pandemic, I know that online there's been a resurgence of online life drawing. And again, you still have obviously the camera and the computer screen flattening the image for you, but if it's not that I think Ken needs any more practice at life drawing because he's obviously supremely skilled. But for us regular folks, I do know that there are a number of online life drawing courses that are available.
Yeah. And of course, we can always draw each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, family members and friends in a cafe, at a party. Yeah.
Ken, I'm actually currently in Tokyo, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Miyazaki Hayao, the artist who did Spirit Away and My Neighbor the Totoro. Our firm, the firm that I used to work for in Japan, designed the Ghibli Museum. And if you ever have a chance, go and check out the Ghibli Museum and how the anime artist Hayao Miyazaki, he goes on site and he sketches landscapes and people with a pencil, and he brings it back, and he has every cartoon and every anime he does is super documented, researched, hundreds of pages of sketches before he actually does one frame in his studio. And all of it is sketches of the architecture and the people. And exactly what we're talking about is people interacting in the spaces. That's probably something that would be interesting to you.
Mm-hmm. And when you do those sketches in cafes, do you get much interest from the people around you? In other words, will somebody who sees you sketching them come and look at what you're doing? Rembrandt too, absolutely. So do you tend to stay in the background or out of the way? Uh-huh. Yeah. I get you. I get you.
Newspaper with the holes in the middle.
But Ken, you're working with a pretty big sketchbook. Pretty hard to hide. Pretty hard to hide behind. Yes, exactly.
I just pulled up Google Maps. So when I lived in Edmonton, one of the main strips is called White Avenue, and there's a cafe on White Avenue called like Block 1912. I think it's a pretty nice coffee shop. Yeah.
Oh,
And so, Ken knows about it. It's very common there to go and sketch and drink coffee, like sketch on the napkins, and they have, at least previously, back I haven't lived in Edmonton in quite some time, several years, but people would do napkin sketches and then put them in the coffee table, the drawers of the coffee table, and the reclaimed furniture around the cafe. And you would just leave your drawings there, and you would say maybe a date, maybe a time, maybe a name, or it would be completely random. And I have drawn maybe not 100 coffee cups and left them at that particular cafe, but I was just Ken working in cafes. That's exactly what I thought of, and I'm glad to see that he's aware of it.
it's funny. A cafe that lives literally 3 minutes walk from my house. I said to the owner was trying to make it more of a social place, and I said to him casually one day. I said his name is David also, and I said, Dave, why don't you set up some life drawing classes? Set up a studio, because he had a big space beside the cafe. A month later, he had some models lined up and sessions. So for $10, you would get 2 hours of drawing and a glass of red wine. It's fantastic. We had about 3 sessions, and then the pandemic hit, so we haven't done it since. But it was the curious thing about that, Henry, was that what we discovered was that you had all kinds of people there. The young and old, experienced, inexperienced, anything. There were no rules. The music was actually pretty good. There was always background music, which I know Joanna also likes. And sometimes, if somebody was unhappy with the pose, they would simply draw other people drawing. So some evenings there was a kind of exchange of drawings at the end. One man came up to me and said, "Here, I did this while you were drawing." So it was the kind of it's like what you described, Chris, a sort of a cafe, a drawing culture in the cafe, which must be wonderful. Everybody's drawing.
There's a question in the chat, David. Maybe we can think about this together. Ken is asking about, we mentioned about asking for permission, and especially when what he's drawing is drawing portraits in a cafe. Should he be asking for permission?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. First, the people who run the cafe, and then the people that you're drawing. Just to set them at ease.
And I think because Ken's drawings are quite lifelike and very, very detailed, so I assume that you do pay a lot of attention to the person's face. A lot of times when we're doing architecture, the facial recognition of the person is not so important. So we tend to kind of blur it out or not put too much detail onto the face so it's not recognizable. I think that comes back to recently, you don't take pictures of people with yourself with your camera. Some people might be offended. So, just to be careful with that. I think it's just a matter of respect. And if you're drawing a portrait of someone, if you ask, I feel like most of the time they would be okay with it.
And I was going to mention just like general social awareness and the context of who you are drawing and who you are. Me, as a straight white cis male, like drawing the portrait of a young woman in public might not be seen as very beneficial. Like being aware of how you're presenting yourself in space, and even if you are comfortable with what you're doing, you may be making other people uncomfortable. So just like being aware of that greater context. But I personally have never had a problem sketching in public, but also my drawings of people never look like the people. So that no one has noticed, to be offended, to be honest.
Yeah. That's the other advantage of drawing in a museum, where most museum goers are used to seeing students and art classes drawing in the museum. So they understand the drawing to be part of the culture of the place.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about the cafe is you get those extraordinary caricatures that Ken was showing us. Incredible. That's what reminds me of some of Leonardo's and Michelangelo's and Rembrandt's and Bramante's. They all this amazing interest in the sort of lines and contours of the face and the clothing, and so on and so forth. That's a good question, Ken. I'm jealous. I look at your drawings in cafes and I'm jealous because I don't take the time anymore, but I should.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have to put together a lecture for Monday morning, I would, 2 lectures for Monday morning. I would go out, I would spend tomorrow afternoon in the cafe down the road.
I'll be at a museum this afternoon. Probably take my sketchbook. Hopefully I can show some of those sketches on Monday.
Ken, I would also, speaking of meeting up with more of the local community, I know it was mentioned in one of the previous lectures about the urban sketchers community with, oh my goodness, I want to say Frank Ching, but I don't remember if that was, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was in connection with Frank Ching, sure.
Yeah,
In
so
Seattle.
yeah, urban sketchers, they're mentioned in Seattle. We have an urban sketchers in Ottawa. There are a ton of amazing architects in Edmonton that I'm sure that are going to be involved with an Edmonton contingent of the urban sketchers. You might just want to look through social media hashtags and urban sketchers in general.
Ken, is there a sketching manifesto? That's a great idea, Chris. I don't understand. That's exactly how you found out about this lecture series? Where?
Oh, okay.
From the Facebook group. Isn't that interesting?
I didn't know that it was posted there. Fabulous.
Ken, why don't you participate with Urban Sketchers? I think the advantage you have is that most urban sketchers start with the, well, yeah, but most urban sketchers, they don't quite get it. They start with what they think is important and forget about the people. You start with the people, and Henry and I are saying that you should add a little bit of context about the place. So you've got a big advantage over most of them.
Yeah.
I think if you join them, you'd find them sort of gathering around to watch you work, and then they'd be rushing back to their own easels to try it out for themselves. But starting with the figure and developing the context.
And sorry, a comment I would mention is also the urban sketchers. I can't speak to the Edmonton chapter, but the other chapters I've seen are very open, and it actually looks a lot like this meeting we're having here, this session. Broad demographics, everybody with a common interest in drawing, whether it's, obviously people prefer in urban sketchers are focusing on urban sketching rather than still life or whatever, but mostly the communities I found are very supporting, and they're just people who are very interested in drawing and creating and talking about all the things we've been talking about here.
Otherwise, Ken, you can come down to Calgary, and I do some sketching in Calgary sometimes, so we can have a small group going on in Calgary. Yeah. Well, this was amazing. I'm really excited about the second half of this program.
Yeah, no, lots of fun, lots of fun.
And sorry, not to spend any like or too much time on it. Can you go back to the Miro board for a second? I just, after all of that trouble uploading that dumb image, even
Yes.
if we just look at it for a second.
Yes. Forget about it. Is it showing up?
Yeah. So this is me trying to use architectural drawing conventions that I've been using at work and sort of twist them a little bit. So obviously section cuts, perspective sections, but then also switching scales. So the intent is the top left-hand corner is actually some floor tiles rendered in pen, watercolor, some pencil crayons. So like the top left is generally closer in detail, being tile, grout lines. A lot of this was experimenting with media, or sorry, with the different mediums, as well as using, or rather turning architectural drawing conventions a little bit while playing with some new watercolors. My choice of color and palette is extremely lacking, which I'm working on. So please disregard the color choices.
How big is that, Chris?
That would be 11 by 15, I believe, or 11 by 14. That's a full sketchbook page.
Have you ever heard of a Beaux-Arts exercise called the analytique?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
No, the analytique, some people have, Marco Frescari, for example,
Mm-hmm.
Whose name you probably recognize. Probably
Absolutely.
know. Yeah. He ended his teaching career as director of the program at Carleton.
He walks around. His name is greatly revered still.
Yes, he was a remarkable man. He wrote in very interesting ways, in very interesting terms about the idea of the analytique, based on the Beaux-Arts tradition, where you had a kind of exploration of architectural ideas, but it was characterized, for example, by playing with scale, which is what you're doing, playing with different kinds of drawings, different kinds of renderings. So very objective drawings, for example, an elevation of a classical order, rendered maybe with shade and shadow, then a zoom that shows the detail of the torus at the base of the column, and a canthus leaf in the capital, and then maybe a zoom back where we see where that fits in the whole elevation. You've seen examples of these, and I don't know if I can show them to you now, but what you're trying, can I show you, Henry? Do we have like 5 more minutes?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
also, I'd say we've spent like a lot of time going over my stuff, and I don't want to hold anybody here longer than we need to. So with that in mind,
Well, I wanted to show you just an experiment that we did. I shouldn't use the word experiment, but we did it for about 4 years as a kind of follow-up from the sketching school program. So you have to imagine, say, 75 to 100 students spending a week together, going back to what Ken was saying, together, 75 to 100 students in one place for a week. And they're living in rooming houses, motels, hotels, campgrounds, all kinds of, they make all kinds of arrangements. And then we've always wondered, they come back to Montreal with portfolios, these amazing portfolios of drawings. We end up with something like 1,500 or 2,000 sketches. And we go through them, we put them together in different kinds of exhibitions. And for several years, we asked students to try to find some way to synthesize the experience. And we used the model of an analytique. And they ended up, and the idea was to do what you're trying to do there. to take the experience of having explored different places or the same place in different ways, and then to put it all together in a larger panel, usually, maybe I don't know, 32 inches by 40 inches. So a little less than a meter by a little over a meter. And I just wanted to show you some examples of what people did. If I can just find them, just give me a second here, patience. It's not something we plan to talk about. I don't think it's, well, maybe it might be relevant to this series of workshops. You can tell us. Let me just. Okay, I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint and I'm just going to shoot through it, okay? So are you seeing anything there?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Something's coming up.
So we can see your desktop now.
Okay. How about now?
Mm-hmm. The dogs.
The dogs, okay. And it's another New Yorker cartoon. So we'll go through it very, very quickly. This is from 5-6 years ago. So for these two dogs, that's an analytique. All of my work deals with the theme of exclusion. Okay. Very, very funny. So here's an example of a classical Beaux-Arts style analytique. This was done by a friend of mine who was born in 1900, died in 2001. He liked to say that he lived in 3 centuries. He was born in the 19th century, lived in the 20th, and died in the 21st. He was an architect, studied at McGill, and was an accomplished watercolorist. This was some of his student work. So that's a great example of a classical analytique. So you see an elevation rendered, 2 rendered sections, and there's a little plan in the middle. Here's another example by the same man, Roy Wilson, just to give you a sense of the classical analytique. These are other examples from the Beaux-Arts here, all dealing with classical architecture, exploring color, detailing. This one is one of my favorites because here's Lecoeur also exploring technique, drawing instruments. There's a section through what looks like a cave. So we're playing with scale. This is an artist that one of our colleagues, whose work our colleagues knew very well. This is the work by one of our colleagues, Robert Mellon, a kind of analytique. He's exploring the idea of a vernacular house in a place called Tilting in Newfoundland. That's a kind of analytique. This is a drawing by the Italian-born but Brazil-based architect, Lina Bobardi. One of a series of design sketches that together make up something like an analytique. That's the old 10,000 lira note, the Italian lira note, which is a kind of analytique as well. Another kind of analytique from Turkey. I like to collect paper money that celebrates architects. So here's Sinan with is it the Blue Mosque behind him? I'm not sure. There's Le Corbusier from the 10 franc note, the old 10 franc note from Switzerland in front of his blackboard. There's Alvar Aalto and Finlandia, I think. Finlandia Hall. Another kind of analytique, Canadian stamps, celebrating architects. This was my version of the $20 bill. These are a series of architectural drawings by a woman, a friend of mine, who teaches in Australia. These are all Australian architects who are exploring different ways of talking about their work. And it's another kind of analytique. They're superimposing different kinds of views, sometimes objective and subjective, sometimes very abstract. This one drawn from the tiles in the what looks like a kitchen. This one more architectural. This one based on a notion of rubber stamps. Frank Lloyd Wright, many of his presentation drawings like analytiques. So what we did, so for several years, we asked students after a week at sketching school to come back and synthesize their work. So here's a woman, a young woman, after spending a week in Lunenburg, putting it all together in the studio. So after producing, 20 or 30 works on site, in other words, outside, plein air, she put together this remarkable sort of collage, a little bit like your dream house, Jenna. It's a kind of a vision, a fantasy vision. And Chris, it's a lot like the drawing you just showed us. So that's Khorshid's. Here's one by another student. She is superimposing different images that she put together. This one, I think, a remarkable collection. Ken, I do think, are you still there? Yes, you are. So this is a young woman who was very interested in, these are mostly classmates, I think, for the most part. I think that might be me in the top right. I'm not sure. I never know. And I always wish they did something about my hair, but you never know. So here's a student sort of collaging impressions of the people she was working with, images that she remembers, like the dream, Jenna. And in the middle, those experiments with watercolor, a little bit of technique. Here's somebody combining, like in the classical analytique, Palladio and Lunenburg. It's a bit of a joke. Here's another student combining images, redoing images and superimposing them with a little bit of text captions. This is a beautiful series of interpretations, playing with letter form, the technique of the tree, different kinds of drawings. This was all about landscape.
Wow, that landscape one was beautiful.
Isn't it
I'm
stunning?
super intrigued by that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I've always wondered if we shouldn't make this more a part of the course. And then you get this kind of thing. Here's somebody, Ling Fei Lu, Liu. So collaging a series of sort of remembered scenes, then they're drawing from their own sketches here, superimposed on a kind of abstraction, aerial view of the Lunenburg docks in the center, with a sense of the harbor, a skyline, a little bit of a reflection, text reflection at the bottom left, and there's a latitude and longitude just in case you want to go there or sail there. Here's somebody else, playing with the objective drawing, playing with technique. Look at this one. It's fantastic, actually. It's a bit of a map of the city, and that's all part of the narrative, Henry. Somebody having spent a week walking around the city with a map. Not that you need one in Lunenburg, it's a grid on a rolling landscape. A little bit like San Francisco, only not quite as dramatic. No streetcars. But you get a sense of the hill on the top, the little vignettes. I think that's the last one. Oh no, here's another one. Here's somebody who discovered the power of color at sketching school. So for Roxanne, the reflection, that's what this is, the analytique, is an opportunity to just splash a whole bunch of color on something bigger than anything she ever did over the course of the week. Then you get, some very sober superimpositions. This was a boat, a ship docked there for the week we were there, superimposed on an abstraction from one of the church windows. That's the tower of the church, whose parish hall is where we had our meetings. And they spent a lot of time down on the waterfront, talking to people, working on their boats. That was it. So just all of that to simply say, Chris, that the drawing that you did reminds me a lot of those, and I would encourage you to keep going. Keep trying.
Wonderful.
Henry,
Thank you so much.
Henry, do you think it'd be worthwhile showing the group some of those things later on?
I think so.
Maybe in the last session, maybe in the last workshop.
I think that would be a very good addition to our narrative workshop. when we talk about narrative.
That's the that's the last one?
I think so.
Is that Monday or the last one?
I think it's the last one. This coming one is on
Okay.
detail and information with Joanna.
Oh yeah, all right. Okay, so maybe the last one. So Chris, if you want to try a few more, I can send you that PDF if you like.
Absolutely. That was going to be my question, is if you'd be able to upload at least some of the references from the professionals. I mean, the student work is beautiful as well. I just don't know what you're allowed to share.
Yeah, I have another version with the students' names. I'm not sure if it's better to leave the names on. Well, the names were there on this one. I think, why don't I just send it to you?
That'd be lovely.
Yeah. And I'll add I had a reference to Marco Frescari also.
Yeah, I did my master's at Carleton. I'm very familiar with Marco, but I'm so out of date and out of touch with the work he had done that I was focused on finishing school.
Yeah, no, I understand. When did you graduate from Carleton?
2014, I believe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's not so long ago. Yeah. So I'll tidy that up and I'll send it to you. Could you send me your email?
Absolutely. I can just drop it in the chat.
Sure. Okay. Henry, do you think I should put that on the mural board?
I think that would be great.
Maybe I'll wait until we talk about it before putting it on. Yeah. Oh, actually, I have an email from you, Chris. So
Yeah.
I'll use that. Thanks very much. I'll send that to you over the weekend.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you made that experiment.
My final project in undergrad dealt with sections and cutting and repurposing. So the idea of working in section is something I've been doing for a very long time and trying to sort of play and experiment with that.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, I found the version with Frescari, so I'll send that to you.
Wonderful.
Okay, I think it's getting pretty late where I am and where Chris is. And I haven't had my supper yet.
Okay.
Lucky Henry, he's got his whole day in front of him.
I know. It's almost lunchtime though. Okay. Well, I guess we'll see everyone.
Thanks everyone for your attention.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, that was
Thank you, guys.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Henry.
Yeah, I'll talk to you again, David.